Hello and welcome to this video where we'll come into OOP documentation. So documentation in terms of type hinting, where you can document which types you want the parameters to be. So as in Python, the type hinting is not enforced unless we come into using, for example, Pydantic, then we'll enforce the types. While here we don't have enforcement of types in classes and functions. So what you do is you type it so that the developers know what the types that are expected. And what you can do is you can do manual validations on the types so that you get the correct types in. However, we'll come into Pydantic, as I mentioned, and then the type validation is automatic, so that will help you. But we'll do some simple type validation as well during the different OOP lectures that will come. So I talked about type, and then there's also strings that you can use for both functions and for classes. The strings show up when you hover over the class. Both the type hint and the strings will show up. And also when you do help on a class or a function, then the string will show up as well. And inside the strings, you do basically describe the parameters, describe how to use the class. We'll go into that. And then we'll also go into some doc testing. So that will be quite interesting. So when you have documentation, you can actually test it out to make sure that it's okay. So I'll show you how to do that. So let's go on to Visual Studio Code now. So here I am in Visual Studio Code, and as you can see, this is an empty GPT notebook, and I continue with the same folder as last time, so you can see the other OOP lectures that we had. So let's continue here. Class student. So we create just a normal class, and now we'll add a docstring here. So docstring is basically you have multi-line string, and you can just describe what it says. So student, what it does is student class for representing students with name, age, and active. So this is a quite simple docstring. And now if we do, for example, help on student, and you can see here is the student class, and you can directly see this summary here, which is the docstring that we had, and then this is the default of the help, so this will always be there. However, so you can also add some description about the different parameters. Right now I don't have any parameters, so I don't have that. Okay, look at this. I hover over my student, and you can see the docstring here, student class for representing students with name, age, and active. So this will help a lot when you're working with different classes and where you're in other places of the code and you may have imported this student class, right? So let me just copy and paste some code. So you don't need to see me type out everything, since we'll focus on the documentation here. So I just copy paste this student class. And as you've seen before, we have a dunder init, and inside the init, we just assign the parameters, name and active, to the self so that it's bound to the instance. So when we're creating an instance, we can do this instance dot name to get the name, dot age to get the age, etc. And then we have just a wrapper. Okay, so what is new here is that we have type hinting here. So this is type hinting. You can see name. I want it to be a string. I want it to be an int. Active, want it to be, for example, if we want it to be int or float, we can do like this, or float. And this works as well. So this means that it's okay to be int or float. Active must be. However, if you place in something else, say right now, if we hover over student, look at what it says. So you can see here's the docstring, right? And also here is, let me put it here so that you don't see the code there. We hover over it. You can see it's class student, and you can see here's the string. And if you do help of student, it's still, so now the difference is that we see the docstring here, but we also see here how to use it, right? So student, name, string, age. So this is how you create a student. And then you have methods here. And the methods dunder init that we have created. And we have done the wrapper, right? So these were the methods that we have. So you can see that the documentation is building on. And let's continue doing another one. So a simple trick is that you can actually do this. You can ask an LLM how they would create a docstring for your class. So you could create a class and then you could send it into an LLM of your choice, and then ask it to produce a docstring. And I did this for a class, and I'll show you this one. I won't type everything out. I'll just paste it in and explain for you. So this is my person class. It contains Dunder in it and a greet and have a birthday. That is it. And then I sent this into an LLM to get the docstrings. And what you can see is that, as we did before, there's a summarization of what the class is. So a class representing a person. And then there's an attribute section and a method section. So the attribute section will talk about the attributes, which types are the ones we expect. And then exam methods also, what they do, some explanation of it, and then example usage, how to use this. And for this, you can see here, there is what is called larger than signs or 3 arrows. And then there is some code for how you create this person class. And here's a code how to use the method. So here's a few tests, and this is called doc tests. This means that you can test this documentation directly. I'll show you how to do that. And then for each method, you can also add docstrings. So to explain what they do. So what I usually do is that I may have, it depends really on how I want to distribute my code. So if I make a public repository and I want to distribute it as an open source project, open source library, and then I will add docstrings similar to this in order for it to be easy for other people using this code. For example, I'll just run this one and I'll just type out person here and just hover over it. And you can see here is the simple docstring. So you have a class representing a person. And then if you do help on it, you can see here is the full docstring, right? So here are even the example usages, and then the methods are not shown here. And also you could do help on person.greet, for example. And you can see this is a function, or this is a method, which has this docstring, prints a greeting message. However, if I'm creating this for internal use or for my team, then I would usually have, or it depends really on the team as well, then I might have less docstring than this. Because what I also believe is that when there's a lot of docstring like this, it will clutter the code for development. So if I'm actively developing this, then it will actually be harder for me to read if there's so much docstring in the way. This is what I think. So let's try out the doc test. So the doctest.py. So now we're in a Python script. I'll just copy this whole code here, save this one, and paste it into the doc test. And then I will close this, remove this one, and I will make something like this. I will go in the top and import doc test like this, and then go into the end. And if dunder name equals to dunder main, so this is a Python preamble, which means that if you are, so this will only run when you run this script directly. And it won't run when you're importing it from elsewhere. Because usually when you import a module from elsewhere, then all the code will run. But I don't want this doc test to run. So I don't want this code inside here to run if I'm importing this class, right? Or this module. So this should run only when I run this. And how it does this is that this dunder name will become equals to dunder main when I run it directly. But if I import it, dunder name will be equal to this name here. Okay, so doc test mod, if I run this one, you will see that, okay, first of all, you need to have your virtual environment on. You can see nothing happens here because it passed. So if we do verbose equals true, and you run it again, and now you can see the verbose here. So it has tested here. Trying person 1 equals person, Alice 25, female, expecting nothing, okay. Trying this, expecting hello, I'm Alice, okay. So these are the tests, right? And this didn't have tests. So let us destroy one. So let's say I remove this one. Person1.greet. And let's run this again. So you could run it by typing in Python and then this name, but I just press the run button. And you can see 3 and 1 fail. And you can see which one failed. Here, syntax error was never closed. Right, then we know that. Close this one and run it again. 4 and 0 failed. So this is a doc test, so testing your documentation to make sure that it works. We will go into some unit testing later on using PyTest, but this is a way to test the documentation. Yes, so now we have tested our documentation and we have created documentation using doctest, docstrings, and we have also used type hinting to show which type that we want for each of the parameters. As Python is a dynamical language, it's not statically typed. So it's important to note what types are intended to help other developers and yourself. However, we'll come into Pydantic later on to have real type validation. Yes, and thank you for watching this video, and make sure to commit and push your code to your GitHub repository. And thank you, and see you in the next video. Bye.